Imagine this. You trust someone. You let your guard down, even share your most private side, only for them to turn around and threaten to ruin your life. But what happens when they don't realize your best friend just happens to be a lawyer? If you've ever dreamed of serving justice to someone who thought they could abuse their power, hit that like button and subscribe, because this is one of the most satisfying revenge stories you'll hear all year. This is how I took down a predator in less than 45 minutes. The story begins with someone very close to me, my best friend. She's one of those people who wears her heart on her sleeve. Kind, trusting, the sort of person who always gives others the benefit of the doubt. Like many people these days, she connected with someone online. At first, he seemed harmless, friendly, charming even. He shared little details about his life, his first name, his general location, the kind of work he did. Nothing that seemed suspicious. In fact, he even mentioned that he'd soon be traveling near where we lived for work, and the two of them started talking about maybe meeting up. Now, here's where things took a turn. Because she trusted him, because he presented himself as this safe, genuine guy, she made a mistake. She sent him a few private pictures. It wasn't reckless. She genuinely believed he was trustworthy. For a while, everything seemed fine. The conversations kept flowing, jokes, late-night talks, the usual online friendship-turned flirtation. But then, cracks started to show. Little red flags. The way he worded certain things, the way he avoided clear answers, the kind of subtle manipulation you can only recognize once you take a step back. So she did the smart thing. She pulled away. She decided she wasn't comfortable anymore. She tried to end the connection, and that's when his mask slipped. Instead of respecting her boundaries, he showed his true colors. He threatened her, coldly, bluntly. He told her that if she didn't keep engaging with him, if she dared to back out, he'd publish those private photos online, spread them, ruin her life. Now, pause here for a second. Can you feel that mix of emotions, the fear, the violation, that gut punch when someone takes something intimate, something private, and tries to weaponize it against you? That's what my friend felt. She was terrified, and honestly, for a moment she felt powerless. But here's where he miscalculated, because while she was panicking, she also remembered something. Her best friend was me, and I'm an attorney. When she came to me, shaking and scared, my first reaction was rage. I could literally feel my blood boiling, my fists clenched, my jaw tightened. I wasn't just angry, I was ready for war. This guy thought he could hide behind a screen. He thought anonymity made him invincible. He had no idea who he was dealing with. So I took a deep breath, sat down at my desk, and told my friend, "Give me everything. Every screenshot, every picture, every username. Let's end this." I started with what little we had: his first name, his screen name, a couple of pictures he had sent her, and then the breadcrumbs began to fall into place. His username led me to a TikTok account. That TikTok connected to an Instagram, and suddenly I had his full name. From there, LinkedIn, a shiny little profile with his job history, his company, his smiling professional headshot. And then I noticed something else. In one of the photos he had sent my friend, he was wearing a branded company polo. Boom, company confirmed. But I wasn't done. I dug deeper. His Instagram had pictures of his motorcycle, complete with a license plate clearly visible. He had literally handed me his address on a silver platter. Piece by piece, the walls he thought were protecting him crumbled. And with each click, each discovery, my fury grew hotter. But so did my focus. I was calm, precise, like a surgeon dissecting his lies. He thought he was clever, but in less than an hour, I had his entire life mapped out. At this point, I drafted an email, not just any email, the kind of email that makes your stomach drop when you open it. I collected screenshots of him threatening revenge porn, screenshots of his username tied directly to those incriminating pictures. I included the proof, the branded polo, the workplace photos he had sent, even the shot of his work laptop with his Outlook calendar wide open, proprietary information everywhere. He had practically gift-wrapped his own downfall. I attached it all, labeled, organized, irrefutable, and then I pulled up the email addresses I had found. The CEO of his company, the Vice President of Human Resources, the Operations Manager, the Public Relations Director, the people who held his entire career in their hands. And in my subject line, I wrote something simple but powerful: employee conduct, urgent legal matter. By the time I finished typing, my hands were steady. My heart was pounding but steady, because I knew exactly what I was about to do. I hit send, and in that moment, I knew his life was never going to be the same. When I pressed send on that email, it wasn't just a message flying through cyberspace. It was a wrecking ball aimed straight at the foundation of his carefully crafted double life. And I didn't stop there, because while the email was already devastating enough, I made sure to spell out exactly what was at stake. In that email, I laid out a roadmap of his own self-destruction, screenshots of him threatening revenge porn, his username tied directly to those pictures, photos of him in branded company gear, workplace images of non-consenting employees, his own laptop, his own Outlook calendar, loaded with sensitive proprietary information, conversations bragging about having sex with an ex at his workplace, messages where he openly discussed plans to bring my friend to his office to do the same. It wasn't just disgusting, it was nuclear. The kind of evidence that makes HR departments drop their coffee cups in horror. And then I delivered the final blow in my email. I informed them that if they continued to employ this man, if they allowed him to travel to the United States for work, I would personally ensure federal law enforcement was waiting for him when he landed. See, here's the thing, my friend is a US citizen. She's on US soil, which meant his threats crossed international boundaries. That put him squarely in federal territory. Revenge porn, extortion, transmission of illicit material across borders. Yeah, those are crimes with teeth. And lucky for me, one of my old law school buddies is an assistant US attorney. In other words, I had a direct line to the people who could make his life a living hell the second he set foot in America. I didn't just hint at this, I wrote it in black and white, crystal clear. If his company still wanted to sponsor his travel, they'd be sending him straight into the arms of the FBI. Let's pause for a second. Can you imagine being on the receiving end of that email? Sitting in your cubicle, sipping coffee, when suddenly your CEO, HR, and PR department all get a dossier of your crimes? Imagine the panic, the cold sweat, the realization that the little online game you thought you were playing just detonated into a career-ending, possibly life-ending nightmare. That was exactly the moment I wanted him to feel. But I wasn't done. Because remember, I also had his motorcycle's license plate, which meant I had his address, which meant that while his company was processing the nuclear bomb I dropped on them, I was also preparing to send every piece of evidence to his local law enforcement. So, no matter what, whether it was his bosses, the police, or eventually the feds, his time was up. This man who thought he could hide behind anonymity, who thought my friend was powerless, had no idea that his entire world was about to crumble. And it took me 45 minutes to make it happen. Now, let me tell you something about my friend. When I finally told her everything I'd uncovered, When I explained that I had his name, his job, his address, his motorcycle, and his entire career in the palm of my hand, she burst into tears, not because she was scared anymore, but because for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt safe. That weight she'd been carrying, that knot in her stomach, it was gone. She realized she wasn't powerless. She realized she had people in her corner. And most importantly, she realized he was the one who should be scared now. Within hours of that email, I started to see movement. His company went radio silent. No public statements, of course, but from what I later heard, HR called him in almost immediately. Imagine sitting across from HR as they scroll through screenshots of your threats, your nudes, your calendar, your motorcycle license plate. There's no lie you can spin, no excuse you can make. The evidence was bulletproof. I didn't need to hear the details. I could picture it perfectly, his face going pale, his mouth dry, stuttering while HR reads aloud the words he thought he could get away with behind a keyboard. And as for the local authorities, they were already alerted. His name was flagged, his actions documented, his address noted. Even if he somehow escaped being fired, even if his company tried to bury it, he couldn't escape the law. The FBI angle made sure of that. He thought he was the predator, but in reality, he was just prey, and I was the hunter. Looking back, here's what I know. People like him count on fear. They count on silence. They think shame will keep their victims quiet, but the truth is, when you shine a light on them, they crumble. My friend thought she was alone. She thought she'd ruined her life. But in reality, she just needed someone to remind her that monsters only have power if we let them. So, what do you think? Was this the most satisfying instant karma revenge you've heard? Smash that like button if this story gave you chills, and tell me in the comments, what's the sweetest revenge you've ever seen? And of course, subscribe for more stories just like this. Until next time, stay safe and remember, karma always collects.